Welcome back to the Authority X Factor podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Schuknecht. And in my book, Unlocking Your Authority X Factor, I share that building a personal brand is truly about service and human connection. Our guest today is a master at balancing deep technical expertise with a personality that is uniquely his own. John is a tax partner at Anders and leads the virtual CFO division specifically around services to the legal industry. He has spent his career helping law firms move from just getting by to becoming efficient, competitive, and highly profitable. Whether he's navigating complex estate planning, ESOPs, or multi state tax planning, John's mission is to change the way people think about accounting. But what I love most about John's brand is that he doesn't leave his personal life at the door. When he isn't revolutionizing financial operations for law firms, he is a devoted spouse, a proud parent, and in a wonderful twist, a passionate beekeeper and chicken farmer. Today, we're going to talk about how John brings that team approach to his clients, how he uses his unique personal interests to build deep trust in a traditionally dry industry, and we'll uncover the authority X factor that allows him to lead with both financial precision and a bit of buzz. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Kelly. And I got to tell you, I'm more of a puppet master. So the chickens, I love the chickens, but I brought the coop home and I said to my wife, "We're getting chickens." And she said, "No, we're not." And I said, "Yes, we are. And I've already checked with the city, and this is the only place in the yard the coop can go." And she went and she said, "I'm not doing anything." So I went and I got the chickens. She loves them. I have not fed them. I've fed them occasionally, but she's the primary caregiver and she loves these chickens. She names them. So I get her to help out.
See, I had to like make a point about your personality before we got into this show because I know you well and you have a big personality, John. Well, thank you for adding a little bit of personality to, what you do. I think that's what makes you so just unique in your role, and I want to dig into that a little bit. So, um, I want to start with talking about your authority X factor as the person at Anders who kind of leads the VCFO services specifically for law firms. Um, the way I describe authority X factor is kind of that unique intersection of the skills and experience that you have in your career, which has been, I mean, I'm not going to age you, but a few years, right? You've
I'm a
been
boomer. Yep.
you've been at Anders specifically for what, over 30 years now?
Going to my 35th year. Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of experience that has led you to the place where you are very specifically qualified to work with law firms as the virtual CFO service provider. So talk to me about your authority X factor. In your words, how would you define what makes you uniquely qualified to work with the clients that you do?
Well, when I came to Anders in the 90s, it was a large local firm. We're much bigger today, but we got most of our referrals from attorneys. So I worked with a lot of attorneys over the years. And in the mid 90s, I met a very entrepreneurial attorney who grew his practice from just this area in St. Louis to across the country and internationally. And I worked with this firm for 17 years. I was on their finance committee, non-voting member, and I watched them make business decisions using data. And I watched how they operated, how they moved money around, how they decided to grow. And it really gave me, in addition to the other law firms that I work with, because there's 20 different ways to do things, but it gave me great insight in how to grow and scale and operate a law firm. And so I think that is the unique experience I bring to law firm clients on a go forward basis.
That's great. So I want to walk back to day one you. I'm gonna call day one you the day you, John Scott, walked into the Anders. Of course, the Anders has had some name changes over the years, so maybe it wasn't Anders the day that you started, but the name of the company, the day that you walked into that office. What did you think that your career was going to look like as a
Oh my
young
gosh.
accountant?
I thought if I could make, just this much money every month, that what else would you need? And I came from a much smaller firm. It was my uncle's firm. And so coming to Anders, which was Anders, Minkler and Deal at the time, we had a
Okay.
tax department of maybe 12 people, but it was bigger than where I was, and the numbers on the returns were bigger. So honestly, I was swimming for about a year, but I thought, wow, this is a place where I could see myself as a partner. Now, it took a few more years to make partner. I think I made partner in '04. Um, but at that point, I was hooked. I mean, I had 4 children. They were in private schools. I had a house and a mortgage and a wife who, uh, although
Who's
she
taking care of
worked,
chickens?
she didn't work outside the home. Yeah, she takes care of the bees and the chickens and the kids. So I decided to make it my career. Slowly over time, you start to build a book of business within the firm and you get to be the partner on specific accounts. And really meeting that entrepreneurial attorney kind of made my career because it was a very large client. It led to other referrals and it was kind of my stake in the ground that said, hey, I'm here. I want to be partner.
Yeah. Yeah. Your comment about like, I just wanted to make a little bit of money or whatever that was, it's so fun that, my daughter's just getting out of college and like at that age, it's like, you just kind of make enough money to pay your rent, right? And you have no idea what your career path is going to, where you're going to end up with it. I've had some more twists and turns in my career path than you. You went into accounting. You're still in accounting. You've been at the same company for 35 years, and you're going to retire there shortly. It's not too far away.
I'm in the late fall of my career.
Yeah, yeah. But, so you didn't have, like, twists and turns necessarily, but as you went on, you got more and more specialized. Your story is actually very special to me. I tell it on stages because you and I worked together, and you came to me this was a few years ago, but I remember you saying, "I'm retiring in so many years, and, I want to become known as" or, you wanted this legacy to be left for the company that you've worked for all these years, right? Like, I want to bring virtual CFO services to law firms, and I want this to be this thing that I leave behind in the company. You want to build it, and so we came up with a plan, and this is how we're going to position John as the person, the person to do this, right? And I love telling your story because I watched you go through it, right? Like you. And I tell all the time, you were already the experts, right? You already worked with law firms. You already knew the financial side of law firms, right? You learned about virtual CFO services and you wanted to kind of really just dive into it, right? Like so earlier you talked about that one law firm that you worked with for 17 years, but how did you over the course of your career become more specialized in law firms specifically? And and why
I
did that
think
become of interest to you?
I think you gravitate towards people that you enjoy working with. And lawyers just have, they're very smart and analytical and methodical, right? There's logic to how they think. And I can understand interacting with them where I don't really mix well with engineers who are very specific about each line and each piece of math. I'm more big picture. I'm the eagle who's flying 50,000 feet in the air. And I remember the conversation I had with you, Jody and Adam. It was, I want to be relevant in the fall and winter of my career. I don't want to do what I've seen other partners in professional services firms as they wind down their career and they're handing off relationships and handing off responsibilities. I sat next to a partner for a while who watched The Godfather on a loop and I could hear it through the wall. I know every word of the Godfather movies and I just wanted to be relevant at the end of my career and build something, yes, that I could pass on to a team that I've helped build out that would thrive beyond me.
Yeah. 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 Had a conversation this morning with another marketing agency that was talking about I was mentioning some of my experience working with accounting firms. And he was saying, how do you work with accounting firms? How do you deal with accounting firms where they're so transactional? Like they see, if I pay for marketing, I want to see the ROI. I want to know exactly what I'm getting back for what I'm putting in, which is true because of my experience in accounting. When I started my own company, I've had several accounting firms come to me, and I totally get what he was saying. Like that is a lot of times the mindset of an accountant. But at Anders and the people that you mentioned, Jody Grundon, Adam Hale, the people that grew the virtual CFO arm at Anders understood that marketing isn't necessarily this dollar for dollar. Like you spend money and then you get back exactly, you can't always track parts of marketing, right? So sometimes it's hard to track what you're doing and the results that you get. But I want you to talk a little bit about kind of some of the positioning that we did with you, like some of the stuff that we did that helped you start to be seen as that person uh, to go to, right? Because I remember one of the things, I remember you coming up to me after one of your events and you were like, I went to this event and people were coming up to me going, "You're the guy with the book," right? Like you were starting to be seen and known in that. And going back, I said earlier, you already were the expert. You already were, right? It was about
Yeah, we
helping
just had to
people
tell the
see
world.
you as that expert, right? So talk to me about some of those things.
Uh, we just had to tell the world that I was the expert, and you were very instrumental in helping do that.
Right.
I mean, it was a function of the book took a little over a year to write, and that was me just blurting out different thoughts. We did have a template to go by because Jody had written a book for digital marketing agencies, and so we kind of followed that template. Now, Jody thought, "Oh, this is just cut and replace, right? Put the legal terms in." Totally different business model. So it wasn't cut and replace. It was, okay, we have these 10 chapters, but we have to fit them into law firm and tell stories about law firms. So it was a little more difficult than, Jody's the big thinker, the creative guy. And so he's not the doer. Adam's the doer. So it was a function of that. It was also being on podcast and writing other content for blogs and email newsletters that went out. And over time, you're right, you can't measure it. It's you're casting seeds and you see what grows. And when you see that it grows in this area, you double down in that area and you forget what was fell in the crack and never germinated. And to going back to your lead in point here, we are trying to change the way people think about accounting firms. So Anders never has been, and certainly Summit before us or before they joined us, was never an ROI type of firm. If we see good people or good opportunities, we don't ask, what is it going to do for us this year? We say, what's the long term play? And we will wait and be patient. We'll also go out and hire, if we found a great CPA, accountant, technical person that we saw a need for, but necessarily didn't have the business for, we would get that person and then they will fill themselves up or we can cross sell and fill them up too. So we're always trying to hire ahead, especially good technical people. And we don't want to be your grandfather's accounting firm. We want to be the one that looks forward and is prospective in nature,
Yeah.
proactive.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned your book. Tell us more about the book.
The book is Judicial Dollars and Cents. You can get it on Amazon. And it was quite the Herculean effort. It was a little over a year, and I would go on walks and dictate into a dictation machine. Actually, I used a software called Otter, and you can just talk, and it transcribes everything. And then I would come back and, with other help editing, get it into a usable format and get an editor to come in and help me clean it up and make suggestions. But it was fun. I'm glad it's over. Don't know if I want to do it again, although there are a couple of chapters I would like to add to it, especially with specific types of law firms, but we'll see.
And you can always do that. That's the beauty of publishing,
That's
right?
right.
You
Print
can,
on demand, you can change
yeah,
whenever you want.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so you talked a little bit about, so you have that book. That was kind of one of the first things that you started working on, although other things started happening in the meantime, right? And then you started a podcast, right? So you have your own podcast. You were going out speaking, networking. What am I missing? What else were you doing as kind of that
Well,
getting in front of your target audience?
when we first talked about this, you came up with a 12-step plan. And I thought, oh my God, do I have a problem? She's giving me 12 steps. So I was lobbying you to put in a 13th step. So it would be not a 12-step program. It really was a function of those 12 steps. And I don't remember the specifics of each of them, but it wasn't do step one, then step two. It was kind of like we were working on 4 or 5 of the steps at once, getting one near complete and then moving on to the next one. It just took some time. Or Jody always said, it'll be 18 months before you get your first client. Well, we serendipitously picked up a client, not because of what we were doing, because it was very early on, but I had a friend and a client who had a law firm that we never did the accounting for the law firm. We just did their personal returns. And she wanted to keep the accounting separate, the tax and accounting separate. And their controller quit. And she knew what I was doing. I had talked to her about it. I said, look, I'm not trying to sell you. I just want to let you know this is what we're doing in the legal space. And her controller quit, gave her 2 weeks notice. And she said, hey, I need you. So that was our first legal client. It went very well. And her firm ended up after about a year and a half merging into another local firm. So we lost that client, but we've added clients after that, and we haven't really lost another client. And I don't mind losing a client when there's an exit for them or a merger. I don't ever want to lose a client due to bad service.
Right. Right. I feel like there's so many keys to success here that you're mentioning, right? Like, so the first one was your desire to be useful, like just in general, wanting to like have a good impact in your career, whether that's, for you, it was working within the company where you're working. It wasn't going out and starting your own thing. It was doing something within the company where you had worked, where you're going to retire from, right? But you wanted to make an impact there. And then good client service, right? So providing good service for your clients, keeping them, and then all those things that I helped you work on, like the positioning you as that expert, helping the world see you as that person. Just I think there's so many good tidbits in that for people who, whether they're wanting to go out on their own, because that's often what I'm talking with people about is the step of going out on their own. But for you, it wasn't about that. It was about doing something within your current firm. Um, Now you know Tracy Barrett.
I
Have
do.
you? Tracy has a book called "What If There's More," and in that book, she talks about that same thing, right? Like, what if there's more? Like, you're in your career. What if there's more? Maybe that's going out and starting your own thing. But she also talks about it doesn't have to be going out and starting your own thing. It could be starting something within your company, right? And that's exactly what you've done.
And for me, that's the safer option. As I told you before with my wife and the chickens, I can come up with the idea and the concept, but I need a team that's going to help me implement. Whereas if you go out on your own, you do everything, right? You're negotiating the copier lease, you're paying the rent,
Yes.
negotiating the lease, in addition to serving clients and trying to attract new clients. I want to work within a team that already has that built out and I can leverage those skills of others to help get things done.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, there's risks and rewards to both really, but I love your story just because it's different. It's not the entrepreneurial story, but it's the entrepreneur within an organization story, right? Like you're entrepreneurial just within the constructs of where you were working already. We talked a lot. So we talked about your journey. I also want to talk to you specifically about just personal branding in general because I mentioned you are unique with your personality, and I think that sometimes in corporate stuffy worlds, we think that we have to put our professional side forward at all times and that we can't be people, right? But you are the perfect example of like you put these things out there. You talk about, the chickens, you talk about like you like to hunt, you like outdoors, you talk about these things in your social media and stuff. And that's okay to be a human being because people relate to you because of that, right? So tell me
Yeah,
more about some of the things that you share.
I'm just a very direct person and I don't play poker. So I would never be successful at playing poker. I can't bluff. You know exactly how I feel on things. And that's just who I am. So I'm okay with that. And I don't really have any secrets. So yes, I have a place in the country where I like to go hunt. In fact, Sharon and I just serendipitously traded our house in 7 acres out of 180 for another house in 30 acres down the road. So I'm going to be, if I can get decent internet out there, spending a lot more time out there and working
Yes.
from there in the late fall and winter of my career. It's just who I am, and I never have been a politician. I'm fine with that. I am who I am, as Popeye said.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's great. I mean, that's what I encourage people to do when it comes to just building their personal brand, that it's okay to be you and show personality, and you don't always have to be this professional, buttoned up person, especially in the accounting world. I mean, that's, very much the nature of the world that you're in, but really like what people connect with is the personality, the things that you share that, you start a conversation with someone talking about beekeeping and it's just interesting to people, right? So
They
I
either
love
connect or they don't, and if they don't, that's okay. There's always
yeah.
someone else out there for them.
Well, I want to ask you about day one you again. So, we talked about day one you. Day one, you walked into the Anders building and started your career. But I actually want to take a different approach with this question. I'm gonna ask you two versions of day one you. So day
Okay.
one you was that young 30 something guy that walked into the building. If you could tell yourself one piece of advice at that time, knowing now what you've learned in your career and the growth, that you've experienced and your career path? What advice would you give yourself back then?
I would say relax and breathe, that the things you think are so stressful and important that you're not doing well, it's all going to work out. All you have to do is keep showing up and keep trying and letting people know that you care. Because if you care, you're going to get a lot of grace, even for your mistakes. And believe me, I made a ton of mistakes. I still do. My old boss at the firm I was at before called me in and he goes, "You're using pen on the work papers." Yeah. He goes, "I make 50 mistakes a day." This is him talking. "And I use pencil because I can erase those mistakes. Use a pencil." So you learn these things over time and you're going to make mistakes. It's just not that important. Just keep showing up, keep trying. And when you figure out something that works, keep doing it. And
Yeah.
sometimes, and I tell my kids this, it's not about, sometimes, you get an opportunity to go somewhere else. And I got them along the way. Sometimes it's the moves you don't make that turn out to be the best decisions.
Yeah, love that. That's a great quote. We're gonna pull that one. So my spin on this question is I want to ask you also, because you've been in that career for 30 something years, um, what about day one you, the day that you and I sat down and you said, I want to become, you didn't say I want to become known for this, but you said I want to be the one to bring virtual CFO services to law firms. Like I think that was your wording. It was like I want to do this. Um, and then as you and I know, it doesn't happen overnight, right? Like I built
Uh-uh.
that 12-step plan, and we started going through those things, and hurdles come up, and it takes time to develop a platform, even when you're already the expert, because you already were. Um, if you could go back to that version of you, let's call that day one you, what or day you're I'm not the math person, whatever it is, day 1 times 365 times 35, whatever. Um, what would you tell that version of yourself? Like, I'm just starting out on this, like, I want to build my thought leadership platform, my personal brand, um, and, now knowing what you've learned over the last several years since that day, what would you tell yourself?
I think it's similar advice because I had a lot of doubts early on. How is this ever going to get done? I know I'm an expert. How am I going to let people know that? We're never going to get a new client. It just happens. And you can't really worry about, will the next prospect hire me? It's how many people can I tell them what we do? And if they have a need, it'll fit. So you can't really get worked up over the fact that they didn't buy now, they might buy later. It's let's talk to as many law firms as we can, tell them what we do, and we're going to fit in a number of those. But early on, you're like, oh my God, there's 12 steps to this process. We don't know if these are the right steps. We think they are. And it's a lot of work to get these done. This book is a lot of work. What am I ignoring? Just trust the process. It does work. Go through the steps, keep producing content, push it out. And again, if I was a one man gang, it probably wouldn't have happened. But I had a great support staff, including you and other people on the team that were pushing me to do it, also facilitating getting the stuff published and getting it out there. I mean, that's what made it doable for me because otherwise I had a tax book. I still have a smaller tax book, but I've been, shedding that over time. But I had a full-time job as a tax partner at Anders and I was doing this other stuff. And so you know, you have doubts, but things work out.
I love it. That's great. Well, John, you have your book, Judicial Dollars and Cents, which we will link to in the show notes. How else can viewers or listeners find you online, learn more about you, connect with you?
Well, you can look up Judicial Dollars and Cents podcast, which is on YouTube. We also do it live on LinkedIn and we publish snippets on Instagram. It has its own JDC VCFO page and a TikTok page. And I know you and I talked about TikTok early on when it was the TikTok dance craze. And I said, well, we're not going to do that. But now we
Love
put,
TikTok.
now it's a black hole. I mean, you get on TikTok and 45 minutes later, you're like, what am I doing? I got to
Right.
move on.
Yeah.
But we do have a JDC VCFO TikTok page as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you, John, for coming on and sharing your authority X factor with us. And thanks for, I selfishly wanted you on. So whenever I tell your story on stage now, I can share
You
the
can point
QR
back.
code for this episode and keep on sharing. So thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, no problem. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. My book, Unlocking Your Authority X Factor, is now available on Amazon. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. See you next week.